Okay, so let's talk about the economy. It felt like we were really getting somewhere in 2024, right? Gaining some serious steam. But then 2025 hit and things kind of stalled out. So today we're going to try and make sense of some pretty mixed signals, figure out what's really going on, and see what the forecast has in store for 2026. Let's get into it.
And that really brings us to the million-dollar question for this entire explainer. After all that optimism, why did the economic engine suddenly seem to cool down in 2025? It's a fascinating puzzle, and to solve it, we've got to start with this huge disconnect that's happening right in the middle of the market.
In this chart, this just lays it out perfectly. Look at that first bar, lending for commercial real estate, that CRE. It's bounced all the way back to where it was before the pandemic. That's great news, right? Well, hold on. Now look at the other bar. The actual number of properties getting sold, it's way, way behind. We're talking only about 2/3 of the sales we saw pre-COVID. So the money is flowing, but the buildings themselves aren't moving. What gives? Which brings us right to our first section, the stalled recovery. We really need to dig into why all that great momentum we had in 2024 just seemed to hit a wall. You know, it really is a tale of two completely different stories playing out at the same time. That big jump in lending, you'd think it's from a buying frenzy, but it's not. It's almost all driven by property owners scrambling to refinance their current loans. So it's more about managing old debt than it is about making new bets. Meanwhile, sales are just sluggish. And that's because of high interest rates, super tight profit margins, what investors call cap rate spreads, and just this general fog of economic uncertainty that's got everyone feeling a little hesitant. And that uncertainty is the key, because, behind all these numbers and charts, it's really about people. It's about us. So let's peel back a layer and look at confidence, consumers, and cash to get to the why behind this big stall. And right away, we see a major red flag. Consumer confidence, which is a huge engine for the economy, it's dropping. We're not just talking about a little dip, we're seeing it fall month after month in two of the most watched reports, the University of Michigan and the Conference Board indexes. And when people start feeling nervous about the future, they tend to close their wallets. And you can see that drop in confidence hitting the cash register for real. Look at this. Real consumer spending growth has slowed down, big time. It was chugging along at a pretty healthy 3.5% at the end of 2024. Now, it's down to just 2.5%. That is a serious tap on the brakes. So what's causing us all to pull back? Well, it's kind of a perfect storm of pressures. Job creation has been pretty weak, which means wages aren't really growing much. At the exact same time, prices for stuff are going up, and that lingering feeling of uncertainty we just talked about, it's making everybody think twice before swiping their card on a big purchase.
And all of this puts the Federal Reserve in an incredibly tough spot. I mean, talk about a balancing act. They're basically walking a tightrope. On one side, they have to wrestle inflation down, but on the other, the job market is getting softer, with unemployment creeping up to 4.4%. So they've started making some very cautious interest rate cuts, but they have to be so careful not to make a wrong move and tip the whole thing over.
Now here's the thing. This slowdown isn't hitting everybody equally, not at all. So let's use the real estate market as a perfect case study. It gives us a fantastic look inside what everyone's calling a K-shaped recovery, where some sectors are shooting up while others are heading straight down.
And the difference is just stark. On one side of the K, you've got sectors that are absolutely on fire. Industrial properties, data centers, they're the rock stars right now, thanks to all the money being poured into AI and our digital world. But then you look at the other side. The hotel business is having a tough time with less travel, and the apartment sector, well, it's dealing with a flood of new buildings, which is putting a damper on things.
But get this, here's where the story takes a really surprising twist. The office sector, the one everyone's been worried about for years, it's actually showing some signs of life. The volume of big deals jumped an incredible 34% from last year. Investors are sniffing out some opportunities. But, and it's a big but, there's a catch. Yeah, more companies are calling people back to the office, but with the softer job market, the risk of tenants not being able to pay their rent is still a huge problem.
Okay, let's zoom in even further to the part of the economy that we all deal with pretty much every day, retail. This is where you can really see how all these big, abstract trends are actually playing out on Main Street.
To the retailers that are winning right now, they've got a whole new playbook. They're getting smarter and faster. First, they're making the most out of smaller stores. Second, they're using things like pop-up shops on short-term leases to stay flexible and create some buzz. And maybe most importantly, they are laser-focused on giving customers either amazing value for their money or a really unique, cool experience that you just can't get online.
This all leads to a really important idea.
consumer financial restraint. And this isn't just some buzzword. You can see it plain as day in the data. Check this out. For the first time in 4 years, how much we spend on our debit cards is growing faster than how much we spend on credit cards. That's a huge signal that people are being more careful, spending the money they actually have instead of racking up more debt.
And just like everything else we've seen, this retail recovery is not happening everywhere at once. The map is really uneven. Get this, of the 19 retail markets in the country that are actually growing right now, a staggering 13 of them are in the South. And that's happening mostly because so many people are moving to those areas, which is creating a ton of new demand for shops and services.
Okay, so we've looked at the stall, we've looked at the consumer, we've looked at how uneven this whole thing is. Now let's pull the camera back and put all these pieces together to see what the big picture forecast looks like for 2026.
And the main conclusion from the experts is summed up perfectly right here. The prediction is that the recovery will follow a prolonged U-shaped trajectory. So what does that mean? It means this is not going to be a quick V-shaped bounce back.
Nope, this is going to take a while.
So what does a prolonged U-shape actually look like on a calendar? Well, this timeline lays it out pretty clearly. We had the stall in 2025. The forecast says we should expect that slowdown to keep going through the first part of 2026. Then, things should start to gradually get better in the second half of the year. But we won't really feel like we're approaching normal until sometime in 2027. We're talking about a journey that's probably going to take another 4 to 6 quarters.
So if you take away just one thing from all this, it should be this. The path forward is not going to be a straight shot up. It's going to be slow and it's going to be uneven. The whole story is going to be shaped by us, cautious consumers making careful choices, and by that K-shaped split-level recovery, where some industries are doing great while others are still trying to find their foot.
Which leaves us with one last really important question to chew on. In an economy that's moving at so many different speeds, where some parts are booming and others are struggling, where are the next big opportunities going to be hiding? That's really the key question for anyone trying to navigate the road ahead to 2026.